The moment that I knew I had to write this book, my Year of Living Vulnerably, was the precise moment that I got diagnosed with complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And, you know, it's tough, but it's also bloody fascinating because it really is about the way the mind works. It's not technically a mental illness, I don't have any problem with that term, but it's really about a physiological change in the human brain at a point of extreme pain. And it's a survival mechanism, it's a coping mechanism. It's totally counterproductive in the modern world, but that is the basis of it. And so recognizing that that was fascinating in and of itself, I didn't want to write a book just about trauma. I'm kind of done with being sad. And I wanted to write what I keep describing to my friends as like the quintessential Rick Morton book, which is like a Venn diagram of all of my interests. So it's like, it's got a bit of reporting, a bit of personal essay, science and philosophy, which I totally nerd out on. And this was a way to do all of those things because really, I mean, if you had to define philosophy and if you had to define getting better from complex PTSD, they're both the same thing. It's like, how do you live a good life? The hardest part about writing anything for me is finding the time and thinking that it's going to be okay in terms to hand it over to someone. And, you know, I was already a little bit nervous about this book because I gave myself permission, I guess, to write about these big themes that a kid from my background in country Queensland who never read the right books and didn't have, you know, the classic education. I'm like, why me? And so I just really struggled every step of the way going, why do I have a right to say any of these things? And eventually, I mean, the only thing that outranks that fear for me is the final fear of missing like the 20th deadline and having an editor or a publisher get really mad at me. And I'm glad that that is the fear that outranks because I'm happy with it. I really like what I wrote, and to me it was such a joyous process of learning things and actually sitting down and giving myself the space to think. In the depths of my worst despair in my early 20s, if someone had told me all of the things that were in this book, I probably would have wanted to push them down a stairwell because you're not ready to receive. You want sympathy, you don't want someone to say, hey, just do this. But like, it's something that had stuck in my mind anyway, and it's just like a seed. And that seed grew over time, and eventually I did the work and the self-reflection. I'm just, maybe there's something in there that will do something similar for someone else. It's not a self-help book, but I do hope it helps some selves.